2001, as the internet bubble was collapsing, as the stock market was collapsing, kind of sounds familiar, right? As people were saying, I can't afford to retire, Goldman Sachs said 4 countries were going to be the economic drivers of the 21st century. And this is 1 year into the 21st century. And they said those 4 countries are going to be Brazil, Russia, India, and China. What made their choice of these 4 countries even more amazing was their recent history. In the case of Brazil, in 1994, they had had 6,100% inflation. And this is 2001. And I had some students from Brazil, and I asked them, what was it like to be in a country with 6,100% inflation? They said, it's real simple. It's a cash-only world. No banker will give you a loan because all you'd have to do is wait a couple of months, and it's easy to repay. And I said, okay, cash only, I can get that, but what was it like to be there? And they said, it's real simple. If you went into a large grocery store or went into a Walmart and you had cash in your pocket, you would buy whatever you could at the front of the store. I said, why? Because if you went to the back of the store and came back to the front of the store, by the time it took you to go to the back and come back, the prices of the things in the front of the store would have changed while you were there. 6,100% inflation. Second countries, the former Soviet Union, which had fallen off the table. Some entrepreneurial crooks took over the economy, and some former KGB guys took it back from them. So that's going to be the second country that's going to rock our world. The third one is India. And a lot of us had a vision of India as a poor country. Well, in 1991, in fact, in October of 1991, India was 2 weeks away from being bankrupt. And they asked the guy to come in, Manmohan Singh, to come in to be finance minister, and he said, I'll come in on only one condition, and that is that we liberalize the economy, we move towards a market-based economy, otherwise I won't take the job. He did, and they started to change. He is now the Prime Minister of India. And then finally, there's the Cultural Revolution. We all know that's China. But what most of us don't know is what the Cultural Revolution meant. It meant that every one of us in this room was an enemy of the state because of our education, our background, and what we do for a living. And we would have been taken out to the hinterlands and educated by the least educated people, living in huts, living in hovels, if we were lucky. And if we had been college educated in the United States and we'd come back to China to help the motherland, we would have been thought of as an enemy of the state. And if we're lucky, we would have been executed. If we're not lucky, we'd have had the crap beaten out of us before we died. And that went on for a decade. Every university, high school, middle school, and elementary school was shut down. Libraries were emptied, turned into warehouses, and that went on for a decade. It was anarchy, anarchy, anarchy for a decade. At the end of that decade in 1976, China had half the GDP per capita of India. It's twice as poor as India. And so a lot of people said, that's a great list. So these are going to be the 4 countries that are going to rock our world. All of them are on the verge of falling apart in our lifetime. Those 4 countries represented 42% of the world's population. In 2001, Goldman said, to assume that countries representing 2 out of every 5 people on the planet will never be relevant economically is an assumption we don't want to make. To assume that countries that have 22% of the world's land mass will never be relevant economically is an assumption we don't want to make. And so what data do we now have about Goldman's bet? This is from the CIA World Factbook webpage, which is available to anybody. It said as of July of 2009, Brazil, Russia, India, and China were responsible for 22% of all the economic activity on the planet. More importantly, as of this year, they generated $400 billion more economic activity than the United States. Brazil, 6,100% inflation. Russia, what was left of the Soviet Union. India, 2 weeks before they're going to go bankrupt. And China, going through a decade of anarchy. At the end of the Cultural Revolution, China's economy was as efficient as the North Korean economy is right now, i.e. it was in shambles. Today, according to our CIA, China is the 2nd largest economy in the world, and India is number 4. And when we have conversations about climate change and healthcare and competition and jobs, that conversations never acknowledge this reality.